Hi, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. Well, as promised, I promised that I would stay committed to inclusion body disease in boas and pythons, even in my current health issues that I'm having, which are going along just fine. All my animals are doing just fine. They're still alive and doing very well. They're thriving. The one animal I acquired, it was perfectly healthy, Popeye, 2 years ago. He's been in the same room under constant exposure with no evidence of disease, and he's perfectly fine and never became sick. In the early part of this journey, I was looking at CBD oils, hemp oils, and hydroxytyrosol, which comes in a high quality olive oil to help combat the virus. It does work, but over the years, we're always looking for ways to perfect our antiviral treatments. And that's why I'm here today to give you the answers. Inclusion body disease usually is four different strains. You need two L segments and two S segments to make infectious particles and start encoding the cells. There's about 50 known reptorhinoviruses and possibly more. All these animals carry these viruses naturally in their gut microbiome. And if your husbandry is not 100% wide variations in temperatures, constant diet of frozen thaw, there's no supplements, low vitamin levels, what happens, their immune systems become compromised. When they become compromised, they can become virally ill. Then, as the animal progresses, it can release more viruses, and then you can have a full blown disease, basically being a result of inadequate temperatures. In my experience, 99.99% of the time, it starts out as a respiratory infection, especially in boas. When a boa stops eating, it's about 99% of the time you have what's called a lower respiratory infection, not an upper. Sometimes it'll start out as an upper one, but most of the time it's a lower one, meaning you can't see the discharge coming out of the animal's mouth. There's nothing coming out of the nose. However, its lungs are inflamed and you have a respiratory infection down in the lungs. And that's most likely the reason why they're not eating. You would have to go about 8 weeks at a constant 88 degrees Fahrenheit with about 80% humidity at all times, and you'd have to give extensive fluid therapy. What I do is 4 quarts of Pedialyte water to 1 gallon of water for, say, a 4 to 5 foot animal, and I would soak them 3 times a week for 3 hours each time. You're not going to do any damage. There's no pruning of the skin. You'll actually see them starting to blow back up again because what you're witnessing when they start losing weight is rapid dehydration. Their body can no longer retain water properly, and their immune system is in hyperdrive, and it's just dehydrating them very quickly. That's why fluid therapy is critical. The ideal situation is to get them is when they're still eating, you know they're infected or they came back positive. You'd want to isolate the animal from all the other animals and use antibacterial soap to wash your hands. It's not airborne or anything like that. You're not going to have a room full of infectious particles all over the room. The snakes don't use that kind of airflow. It's very limited and very secluded in their enclosures. So you wash your hands, and you should be doing this with any animal at any time because you never know what animals you had, what they could be carrying, what they are not carrying. So you can inadvertently transport viruses just by handling, going into a cage here and a cage there and a cage there without washing your hands. And if one of those animals are sick, you can spread, even if it's a respiratory infection, you can spread that disease throughout your entire collection. You want to wash your hands with antibacterial soap every time you go in and out of your enclosures, and especially when you're handling their drinking water. It's a daunting task, but it keeps you from spreading any diseases throughout your collection. Anyway, you need these microtubules inside the cells for viral transport. What you want to do is on an affected animal is use fenbendazole and ivermectin mixed along with vitamin E. That will enhance the effects. You want to take the capsule of fenbendazole, ivermectin, put it in the prey item's mouth. Then you want to marinate the prey item in water, the dead animal in water, and you want to take the IgY antibodies, you want to break the capsules open and marinate that prey item in the IgY antibodies. If you're dealing with a larger prey animal like a small rabbit, then you could stick the IgY antibody in there along with the fenbendazole ivermectin capsules, and that'll be just fine. That would work out great. That's what I do for Hercules because he's on rabbits. So these compounds interfere with these microtubules. It'll actually break the pathogen. Even if you have a healthy animal, what I know now is annually, if I have an animal like my Nicaraguan, even though he has no evidence of disease and he's perfectly fine, he's been fine for 6 years now, 4 feedings in a row, I'll do the ivermectin fenbendazole capsule for 4 feedings in a row every other week, and then he's fine for the rest of the year. And then I just repeat the process. I don't wait for him to get sick for me to treat him. I just deworm him. That's what it really is, but these drugs should be actually repurposed because it's not just for deworming it. Fenbendazole and ivermectin have many modes of action. A lot of people, they're doing ivermectin trials in Florida right now for cancer because what it does is it interferes with the microtubules inside the cells, and without the microtubules, you cannot have cell division, and that's what cancer is. It's out of control cell division, and that's the same thing in these arenaviruses. If the animal becomes sick enough and bad enough, you'll actually can see tumors start to form. That's cancer. Well, for cancer to happen, even in a reptile, you had to have uncontrollable cell division, which leads to these microtubules, which these compounds will break. That way, you'll never again have a problem with these viruses. In future videos, I'm going to demonstrate how to administer this the correct way. And the reason why I'm making this video now is I had some recent subscribers. They've been watching these videos of inclusion body disease, and things have changed since then. You can still use the CBD oil and the hydroxytyrosol, and it did work. But if you want to go for a more effective way, you want to use the fenbendazole and the ivermectin on top of the IgY antibodies to have a 100% guaranteed success. You want to keep the temperatures, as I said, at 88 degrees flat, no drops. And you want to keep your humidities around 70-80% in fluid therapy. You do that and you do it correctly, you will recover the animal, despite what anybody else says. But as I said, as promised, I was going to keep going until I figured out exactly the best way how to go about defeating this terrible disease. I don't charge money for this information because I just do not put money ahead of life itself. And I've been using personally the Fenben, and you can look it up on YouTube, Fenben by John Campbell. That's what I've been doing, and I've been having a lot of success with it along with the Protosol 50 in my case. But that's a different story for a different day. I hope you all have a nice day, and good luck.
Microtubules are crucial for viruses because they act as highways for transporting viral particles and proteins inside cells, moving them from entry points, like the cell membrane, to replication sites, like the nucleus, and then out for release, using motor proteins like kinesin and dynein. Viruses hijack these dynamic cytoskeletal tracts and manipulate microtubule-associated proteins, MAPs, and motors to facilitate infection, assembly, and immune evasion, making microtubule targeting drugs a potential antiviral strategy.
Fenbendazole, a dewormer, shows potential antiviral effects in animal cell studies and limited animal trials, primarily by disrupting microtubules crucial for virus replication and by stimulating immune responses, interferon. Studies demonstrated it inhibited bovine herpes virus, BOHV1, and reduced viral loads in bovine viral diarrhea virus, BVDV, infections in animals. Crucially, it's used for parasites, not approved for human viral infections, and lacks human safety/efficacy data for viruses. So claims for human use, especially for COVID-19, are unproven and risky. Microtubule disruption. Yes, like many other viruses. Arenaviruses, including Reptorhinaviruses, exploit the host cell's microtubule network and associated motor proteins, dynein and kinesin, for crucial steps in their life cycle, such as intracellular transport and assembly/budding. For example, studies on the general mechanisms of arenavirus infection have shown The matrix protein Z of Lassa virus, a mammarenavirus, interacts with the plus N-directed microtubule motor protein KF13A, which is involved in the transport of Z protein to the cell periphery for virus budding. The transport of viral components within the cell, including the movement of the glycoprotein precursor, GPC, through the Golgi pathway, relies on cellular transport mechanisms that likely involve microtubules. The microtubule motor protein KF13A is involved in